welcome to The Winning Mentality. I'm Charlie Bosco, and this week I've been working in the Colorado mountains, and by happy coincidence, an athlete I've long admired, French whitewater kayaker Nouria Newman, was as well. She and I chatted about how she got into her sport, what drove her during her days of competing, and we also talked about where she's at now, both in kayaking and life. She's funny and insightful in equal measure, and about as far removed as you'll ever get from your typical professional athlete. Good interviews are a broad church, and long may that be the case. Some of them are formal affairs, where you're constrained by predetermined time and topics, and sometimes an interview can just be sitting down on a riverbank and chatting to an interesting person. So it was with Nouria Newman. Nouria, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
And we're sitting here in Vail, Colorado, and you're competing at the GoPro Mountain Games. But are you, well, can one be a professional kayaker?
I guess I would be a professional kayaker, but a professional kayaker doesn't really live off kayaking. So I try to kayak as much as I can, and whenever I get broke, I find a way to get money. So usually it's getting a proper job.
And how does it work living this lifestyle? What can you do to keep doing what you love?
So winning competition with prize money is one of the way we make income, and then basically sponsors, partnership, and projects. And
for the uninitiated, what is whitewater kayaking? What's the type of kayaking that you do?
So I started kayaking at 5 years old in France, and we have a really strong club system. But when you start with the club, you start with slalom and downriver, because they're the competitive disciplines, and that's how the clubs get public money. They get the funding according to the number of kids that are in the club, and then the results they're doing on the kids' races. So I started with that, and then only got introduced to the plastic side of whitewater, which is like river running and extreme kayaking and freestyle a little bit later. And I did slalom, freestyle, and creeking for a few years now. I've recently quit competing in slalom. So I'm mostly doing creeking. That's my main discipline. And also a little bit of freestyle. I'm getting back into it. It's not easy.
So how did you get into kayaking? And actually, when you tried it, did you instantly think it was for you? Because I'm not a fan of cold water, but kayaking takes place in a pretty hostile environment. It's wet and cold, and it doesn't seem like the kind of sport that most people would instantly fall in love with.
Yeah, kayaking is not the sport that you're gonna start and be like, whoa, this is amazing straight away. Like, you're definitely gonna struggle, and probably for 3 or 4 years before you have like a lot of fun. I started because my dad's friends were kayaking, and they had a plastic kayak on their roof when they came and visit at some point. And I really thought it was a big plastic toy. It's matching color with my Playmobiles. And I told my parents I want to do this. And I was probably 4 years old at the time. And I was really insisting, and my parents were like, no, you can't do this because you don't know how to swim. So I think because they said no, I was like, ooh, I need to learn how to swim. Went to swimming lesson for a full summer and came back with like the certificate that you can swim by yourself. And I had like a super ugly pin with like a yellow duck, and I was so proud. Came back to my parents and was like, okay, now you need to drive me to the kayak. And they felt really bad because they didn't think that was going to happen. And the kayak club is quite a ways from where we lived, so they had to drive me, and I started kayaking in the club. But the first years, it was, I don't know, I think I was enjoying like going to the club and loading the boats and playing with my friends on the water and kind of exploring the local lake. But I don't think the kayaking itself was like driving me. I think it was more like the adventure side of it, because when you're 5 years old, like everything seems like epic. I went on rivers, like my first river. I went back a couple years later, and I was like, oh my god, this is so boring. And I just remember it being like so big and scary.
Did you have a mentor in those early days, or were you just figuring it out for yourself as you went?
I I had a lot of mentor. I think the first thing was like the kayak club coach. So at first we were just going out as kids playing, but because the clubs get the fundings from competing, I did my first kid race at 6 years old, and I guess I became competitive. But I just remember winning like candies and a super ugly fanny pack and a medal, and I was like, oh, you can get free presents? I want to win races. And so that's how I got like into racing, to get those super ugly promotional fanny packs. But I thought they were really cool at the time. And I became super competitive. Like I would I really wanted to win all the races. And I think that like that's what drove me until I was able to do the Eskimo roll. And then once I could break that mental barrier of like being stuck in my kayak underwater, I think things changed.
Sorry, could you just explain for non-paddlers what an Eskimo roll is?
Oh yeah. So the Eskimo roll is when you flip in your kayak. It's a technique that allows you to get back up without swimming. So before that, before knowing that technique, you just flip, and then you're stuck in your kayak. You have to pull your skirt, extract yourself, and swim. And usually, I mean, where I grew up, swimming is not really nice because the water's cold. You need to get all your gear back to shore. It's scary. And so until I was like able to do that, I was actually really scared. And I didn't quite enjoy like running like whitewater. And then after that, I was no longer scared, and I just started like, I guess, playing with the river. And so I was not just only driven by competition, because I would just go on the river and have so much fun. And then I guess competition still mattered, but I became a more complete kayaker.
I've got to be honest, I'm kind of surprised to hear you say that you enjoyed the competition, because I've spent some time around kayakers, and it seems like a really friendly, inclusive scene, and it seems kind of out of keeping with being competitive and wanting to directly compete against someone.
I don't think, like, that's the cool thing with kayaking, is like there is no direct competition a lot of the time, like most of the time. And that's what a lot of young paddlers or older paddlers don't quite get. It doesn't matter to beat others. Like if you're actually focusing on like, oh, I want to be that person, you're not gonna do good, because you really need to basically be as good as you can personally and compose with the river. And if you're focusing on something else, like, oh, I want to get on the podium, instead of focusing on, okay, this is what I want to do in my paddling, this is a race, and that's what I'm going to try doing at this moment. I think it's the difference between people who manage to perform and people who struggle. Your year or 2 years of training are at stake in a minute and a half, and people are not relaxed. If they're friendly, some of them, but they don't have to be friendly. So a lot of them are not always friendly, including me when I was racing. You know, you're so focused, you don't make the effort to sometimes be nice to people around you. The first people that usually take the hits are your coach and your family and your friends. Sorry, guys.
What was your optimum mindset when you were competing then? Were you quite aggressive? This is only judging from the fact you've just apologised to your coaches and your family.
So I raced slalom for over 15 years. So I guess my mindset's coming to races definitely changed in time. I've came to races like doing mistakes, you know, like just thinking about like the results or the outcome instead of thinking of my kayaking. So that's something that I slowly learned over the years. And I was really like struggling to finish my runs. So I would take a lot of risks and sometimes like not make it. You know, just take too much risks and you're out. Next thing you know, you're out. I think it changes over time, but I really liked competing in slalom. It's such a high performance sport. Like, not that this is not hard, but like the field and the competition and the skill levels required to get a world championship medal in slalom it's a total different sport than this. Like, GoPro games are like really hard, don't get me wrong, but it's doesn't require the same hours of training, the same commitment. Like, we were full-time athletes. I had weeks I was training like 35, 40 hours a week, and that was it. And I guess sometimes like it helped me like to find who I am and learn about myself, you know, and like, okay, I can push it, I can do this. And some other times it also brought up like the worst that I have in me. So being really competitive, or, you know, you train 40 hours a week and you get frustrated and you have to repeat those moves over and over. Like, some sessions you do like 50 times the same move. And some session you did it 50 times and you start missing it 10 times in a row. And I would just go crazy. Like, I would have like anger rage. And I think most slalom paddlers have it. Like, it's really common to see like slalom paddlers just going crazy, losing it, and just smashing their gear, or to totally unacceptable behaviors. I didn't hit on my boat or break my paddle because it was too expensive for me, but I would just go upside down and scream as loud as I could underwater.
It doesn't sound fun when you talk about it like that, but do you miss the emotional highs and lows of competing?
So you still have that in extreme kayaking in very different ways. And I mean, it doesn't sound good. I mean, at times it was definitely hard for me. I think some person are dealing with it way better. And I think paddlers, like slalom paddlers that performed and are still performing better than I did, are definitely dealing with all those things way better than I am. Like Jess Fox is just insane on that level. Like, I never really saw her getting angry, or, I mean, she probably is, but she managed to like keep herself together. Same thing for Vavra, Radilek, or some of those guys. But it's also the challenge, you know. Like, you cannot do a move like 50 times in a row, but when you're gonna get it, when you're making progress, or when you actually have that good run in a race, it feels amazing.
And how does that compare to the buzz you get from what you're doing now?
I guess the competition side is really similar, except that the environment is like way more relaxed, so it's also easier to stay calm and not take yourself too seriously. But then in extreme kayaking, and like when you do expeditions or you're gonna go run big rapids, it's a different kind of struggle, but there's definitely a lot of fear, a lot of stress, and in some way it's easier because you don't have all the competition like atmosphere that's like pressuring you, but it's also way harder because when you mess up, it's not just a race. Like, if you mess up, it's over. You know, like, it's hospital, or it gets really bad. So that's definitely harder, but I think it's really similar in some ways, to just have to like be either at the start of a race and you feel the pressure, at the start of a rapid and you're like focus on what you have to do in your kayak. And so I think racing slalom for some years really helped me, and I'm glad I did all those mistakes while I was racing slalom, and now I've learned from them, hopefully, and it helps me to deal with like running big rapids and not the opposite.
I just want to pick up, you've mentioned fear a couple of times now. Do you still get scared, or does it go to the back of your mind as time goes by?
I'm always scared, and I think it's good to be scared. There's just a difference between rational fear and irrational fear. When we run rapids, like the ones we're running, if you're not scared, you're crazy. You're a crazy human being if you just like get yourself into this without being scared. And I mean, what people always see in extreme kayaking, especially, you always see the outcome, you know. You see the person running the biggest rapid, and then you're at the bottom and adrenaline is high and you're just really stoked, so you're screaming and you're claiming it. That's what people see in the media, and it's also our fault to just put that part out there without putting the behind the scenes or what's before. And before you go run those big rapids, you have like your skills and you've worked on your kayaking, but you also have like with Scout, it's basically risk management. You're going to scout a rapid and, okay, do I see the line? Yes, no. If I don't see the line, I'm not going. If I see the line, okay, what are the dangers? This could happen, this could happen. Too dangerous. Yes, you don't go. No, you can go. And then how can I minimize the danger, like setting up safety? And of course you're scared, but you also, once you commit to running a rapid, you know what you have to do and you know you can do it.
And where does that judgment come from? Is it just experience? I mean, how do you measure risk and your risk tolerance, and is it universal across paddlers?
I think it comes from experience and knowing yourself. And there are things that are universal, but there's also differences. So for me, growing up in France, we have like small, manky, maneuverable technical rivers. I have a strong slalom background, so those hard technical moves don't scare me. But when I first paddle like bigger gradient, like slides or waterfall, I was definitely scared. And for instance, I went on this trip in Norway with Marianne Setter, and she's like, all right, just follow me. And she just routed me down some of the biggest things I had ever run. It was terrifying, but it was huge, but it was pretty straightforward at the same time. And I'm like, okay, she was older than me. She was taking me with her, like under her wings. I'm like, okay, don't complain. Just whatever. You're scared. Just follow and just keep it together. And then we reached a small rapid, and she's like, oh, I'm gonna portage this. And I was like, I'm not. I'm totally running this. It's like, you do this move behind this, and that's it. And she looked at me like, oh, she's really gonna do it. And I just did it, and it was really easy. So I think, depending on people's background, they have different like assets, and so different vision when it comes to risk. Something that seems really risky for someone, because they're not used to that kind of whitewater, can seem pretty fairly like manageable for someone else. And then you also have like culture. Like I ended up paddling a lot with a group of early 20s kayakers last summer, and then it's definitely different than when I go with people that are like older than me, like 35, 30, and so you can also see the different mindset, you know, like it's kind of scary at times.
Is part of the inspiration for you that in the future you might expand that comfort zone? It seems like there's so many elements to this that there's always going to be space for your comfort zone to grow into.
I think what I like about kayaking and is like the mental aspect of it would be like, yeah, you're expanding your comfort zone, but you can only do that because you're expanding your skills, your experience, the crew you're going with, and the rivers are constantly changing, so you're traveling to all those new places, and a lot of the time, even if I mean, they are first descents, but they're also like runs that people have done. But for you, it's some sort of new kind of kayaking, and I really like that because it's never boring. You know, it's never the same.
And just looking into the future again, where do you see yourself in your kayaking go? Do you have a set target in mind or a goal, or you just want to keep having fun?
So I quit slalom, and that I think like right now it's not been a year since I quit slalom, probably like 6 or 7 months, and right now it's something that I find really difficult because I always had those goals. You know, I'm like, okay, my goal is team trail, April. I train for that. If I make it, my second goal is World Championship, September. I train for that, and now I don't have that structure anymore, and so it's hard for me to push myself the way I used to in some ways. But at the same time, it's also giving me so much more freedom. And I can choose what I want to do, and I have so much more options. I think I want to do more expedition kayaking because I really like this kind of kayaking where you go with all your gear and you get out there and there's no one, nothing matters. You know, you're 5 days on the river and the outside world, it's gone for 5 days. And I really like this. I really like the group dynamics that you create with people. Like, there is a lot of trust for sure. And I think that's something I really want to continue pushing.
It's nice to hear that, actually, because sometimes when I speak to athletes who've moved on, I almost get the feeling that they may be a bit lost without the competition, but it doesn't sound like you're going to struggle with that.
I think if I had only done slalom, I would probably be really depressed right now. And I did feel very lost. I still have times where I'm like, what am I doing? I used to just like wake up, go to training, go to university, and my day was like, you know, schedule. And now I need to constantly make my own schedule when all right, where's the water good? Okay, can I drive there? Can I afford it? Do I have a crew? No, it's not good. I need to train. I no longer have a coach to tell me what to do or help me out with training. So a lot of the stuff are actually getting way harder, even if I feel like I have more freedom.
And this lifestyle you've got, it sounds amazing. You're traveling the world, you're doing something you love every day. But I lived a slightly, I guess you call it, bohemian life for a few years, just climbing and skiing as much as possible. And I think it takes a little more mental and emotional energy than people realise. It's not just waking up every day and living your dream.
It's tricky. It's not easy because as kayakers, most of the time we don't have the financial comfort, so we're a little bit tight on budget. So that makes it hard to travel and be like, ooh, all right, I need to win this race, or all right, if I could get a little bit of work here and then, or have a few days when I get back home where I know I can somehow make money. But at the same time, it's tiring. We're on the road. We drive a lot. We sleep in the dirt. Like a lot of the time, I do 3 months where I'm like sleeping on the pad outside, and then it kind of seemed pretty normal to me. But also we have a really awesome community, and so we show up in Vail and we don't necessarily have a hotel, but our friends have a hotel, and you just end up like staying with your friends in this hotel, or like, oh no, we have the trailer, take the trailer. So I have sponsors, but my number one sponsors are definitely like the paddling community and the friends that are like, yeah, sure, you can stay on my couch or stay with us for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And that's really cool because then they come and visit me, and I wish I had better rivers so I would have more friends come and visit me in France, but it's really cool to have like that tight group of people in your life, and you know, like somewhere in New Zealand, somewhere in the States, somewhere in Argentina, and you have this massive group of friends that all over the world. I really like it. This is like probably one of the best things for me.
Could you see yourself living a different life? I mean, I heard it described as having an empty cup once. Some people just always want more and can't ever imagine being happy with anything less than doing what they love every day, day in, day out.
I feel like I have a full cup right now. I get to amazing places. I paddle with amazing people. I meet other amazing people. They're not necessarily paddlers. And I feel like my cup is full of experiences. And then, yeah, of course, I'm missing like stability, and I'm living in precarity. But I have my master's in political science and journalism, and I'm going back to school for 3 months in September to do this professional filmmaking school, and we'll see. For now, my cup is full, and I'm really happy with what I'm doing, and I know that if I want to switch to something, I have something else. Because I went to university, and I think it's really important to have a backup plan. It doesn't have to be school. It can be a little business. It can be anything. But to have a backup plan, just so you don't have that constant pressure, like I need to make it happen. If it doesn't happen, I would be terribly sad because I want to paddle more. There's so many things I still want to do in kayaking, but I know I can do something else, and that's really helpful. Yeah, I think in some ways, like I've been doing really well, like to go to school and kayak, and I definitely had some harder years. It looks like I have things sorted out, but there's also a dark side of me where I really am a shit show a lot of the times, and I'm lucky I have really good friends to have my back, and they created a system of DAG points for all the stupid things that I do, like forgetting my kayak to go kayaking or things like this, missing planes. I guess it's an open door to maybe creativity and freedom, and also a lot of troubles and random things happening to you. I just try to embrace it, but it always gets me in tricky situations, that's for sure.
Thank you to Nouria for her time and openness. It was an absolute pleasure to chat to her, and it sounds like she'll be well worth following in the coming months and years. If you want to do so, check her out at Nouria Newman on Instagram and Facebook. We will be back next Sunday, so I'll speak to you then.